Welcome everyone to this session on the GP training offers and upgrades. I'm going to go through frequently asked questions about how offers work, how upgrades work, and what happens after this. So I'm going to start with some of the frequently asked questions about offers. So sometimes people ask, can I get more than one offer in the same specialty? i.e., I've got an offer for GP. Can I get another one and then decide, do I want this one or do I want this other one? That will never happen. Okay, you only get one offer from each specialty. If it's not your first choice, you can opt in for upgrades. But if you opt in for upgrades and one becomes available, it's automatic. That's really important to understand. Let me give you an example. Someone got an offer in Birmingham and Solihull in West Midlands, and it's their 25th choice. They opt in for upgrades, and now any one of the ones higher from their 24th to their first is available. The highest one that has a slot, they will get upgraded automatically if a slot becomes available. There's no guarantee anyone will get an upgrade. If none of those become available, then they're not going to get an upgrade. But let's say one becomes available in their third choice and they've opted in for upgrades. They'll just get an email when the upgrade cycle is run to say, your new offer is this. They won't ever say, we could offer you this new one. Do you want that one or do you want to keep the old one? No, you've got the new one now. The old one's gone. You can't get it back. That's been given to someone else. Okay, so that's how it works. You only get one offer for one specialty at a time. You can't have more than one and compare. Okay. Another question. Someone just got an offer, for example, in the last cycle, and they contacted me and said, look, I can't opt in for upgrades. This isn't my first choice. How do I? That's because when you get an offer, you have to either accept it or hold it before you see the option to opt in for upgrades. There isn't a separate thing, accept with upgrades, hold with upgrades. You either click accept or hold, and then you'll see the option to tick the box to opt in for upgrades. Another question that gets asked a lot, what's the difference between hold and accept? Hold means you haven't committed to this job. You're pausing the offer until the hold deadline at the latest. The whole deadline is the 28th of April. If you don't log back in by that date, you will lose that offer and get no offer at all for GP. Yeah, you won't have a job, okay, for GP. So hold is primarily really for people that are waiting for other specialties. But as pretty much every specialty has now released their offers, really, if you want GP and you get an offer and it's somewhere you want happy to go for the next 3 years, hold isn't relevant to you. You should just accept, okay? But if you accept and you were waiting for another specialty, all other specialties will end their application. You will just automatically withdraw. Another question someone asked is, I'm already holding GP, now I've been offered core surgical training. Can I hold that too? No, if you hold a second specialty, your first one will be lost. You can only hold one offer at a time, okay? Right, so that's about offers. Now let's talk about upgrades. So people ask, how often do upgrades run? They run usually about every 3 working days. So for example, the last set of offers was on Tuesday, all right? Those people had 2 working days to make a decision. So they had until today to make a decision. When you get an offer, if you don't make a decision within 48 working hours, you just lose the offer. That's it, and your application's over. But you see, although they've had until today to make the offer, they didn't run a set of upgrades today. It will probably run tomorrow. Do you see? So roughly every 3 working days. They don't ever run on the weekends. They don't run on bank holidays, but roughly every 3 working days, a set of upgrades will run up until the upgrade deadline, which we'll talk about in a second. And then I would cover this one, that if you opt for upgrades and you don't like the upgrade, you can't go back to your old offer. Your old offer's gone. But can you see, if you've ranked things correctly, i.e. you've put things in the order that you'd actually want them, you can only be upgraded, you can't be downgraded. So it must be something that you wanted more. For example, if you've got your 20th choice, you can't be changed to your 25th. You'll only change to your 19th or 18th or 17th, all the way up to your first. That's why it's really important that you rank based on your genuine preference. One of the last upgrades, 2nd of May. Nobody will get any upgrades after the 2nd of May. Anyone that gets a new offer after the 2nd of May, which is only for people who are still on the waiting list, you'll only have the option to accept or reject. There'll be no option to hold anymore. There'll be no option to upgrade anymore. Okay, so the last set of upgrades, 2nd of May. How should you choose your preferences? Really straightforward. Research, where would you like to live for at least the next 3 years? Then if you could have a job anywhere at all, where would that be? Put that number 1. If there were no jobs there and you could work anywhere else, where would that be? Put that number 2. Keep going until you've put all the areas you would work in based on your genuine preference down. Do not rank anywhere that you would not take a job in. Really common myth and mistake in ranking sometimes people follow bad advice that some random on a WhatsApp group has told them, put everything down, that increases your chances. And what they do is they put everything down, they haven't done any research, they put down a place that they have no idea, they get an offer there, then they research and they realize it's remote, it's not somewhere near where any of their friends and family are, they don't really want to work there, they don't want to live there. And so now they reject that offer and their application is withdrawn. You're not going to get another one. You can't opt back in now. Whereas, can see, if that person had only ranked places they would take a job, they wouldn't have a job at this stage, but they'd still be on the waiting list. Then after the upgrades, they might get an offer somewhere where they actually want. So that's why you should never rank a place that you don't want a job in, that you wouldn't take a job in for the next 3 years. Okay. Right, and then that brings me on to the waiting list. So common question that people who are on the waiting list. So who's on the waiting list? It's someone who has not had an offer at all for GP training. If you've had an offer and you're waiting for an upgrade, you're not on the waiting list. You've already got an offer. So it's someone that hasn't got an offer at all. So really common question, and you see this a lot in the Facebook groups, that someone will say, my rank is 5,900, 6,200, 7,100. What's the chance of me getting an offer? No one can predict your chances, okay? That's because there's so many variables. It depends which places do you want. What did other people that wanted those places score? If they've ranked higher than you, they're going to get the job before you. Are there any slots left at the next upgrade cycle? Okay, so as long as you've got a rank and you've ranked things correctly, all you have to do is wait, and you may or may not get an offer. Okay, if you don't, you can resit the exam and work on improving your score. Okay, so that brings me on to the next question. When can doctors who are on the waiting list get offers? See, this is the good thing about only ranking places you would accept a job in, is that after the upgrade deadline, so after the 2nd of May, the only people that can get new offers is people who are still on the waiting list. If you've received an offer before that and you reject it, your application is withdrawn. Okay. And then, so what if you don't get an offer? There is no set end point for people who are on the waiting list, but realistically, after June, you're unlikely to get any offers because it's not time for the pre-employment checks to happen. So, what if you don't get an offer? Well, then you can apply again in round 2. So that brings me on to round 2. So round 2 will open 25th of July. The dates for the next MSRA for round 2 are from the 1st to the 8th of September. Okay. So people will often ask, can I use the same MSRA score for round 2? Well, you can, but if it wasn't enough to get you a job in round 1, it almost certainly won't get you a job in round 2, which is more competitive than round 1 with fewer jobs. To give you an idea, there's 4,100 odd jobs in round 1. In round 2, there'll be about 400 jobs. Okay, far more competitive. So if your score wasn't enough to get you a job in round 1, you should resit rather than use the same score. So although you can use the same score, should you use the same score? No. Unless your score was excellent, if you didn't get a job in round 1, you should be resitting if you want to apply in round 2. Which brings me on to the last question. If I sit in round 2, can I use that score for round 1 next year? So like, could I apply in September? Let's say that there aren't any jobs, because in round 2, only a few places will be recruiting. Like London often has 0 jobs in round 2. A lot of the popular cities will have only 1 or 2 jobs in round 2. Some will have none. Okay. So, but what if you get a good score in round 2, but there just happens to be no jobs where you want to go? Could you use that score for round 1 next year? You could, but only for GP. You couldn't use a score in round 2 for GP for any other specialty. If you're applying for other specialties in round 1 next year, you'd have to reset. But for GP, you can use a score in MSRA for up to 12 months for a future GP application only. Okay. So those are the really common questions. Really, the next 10 minutes or so, I'm just going to answer your questions. So if anyone has got any questions, please ask them in the Q&A, not in the chat, and I'll try to answer it. So someone's asked, what is HeFT? Okay. It's a common question. You might see it asked in the group. So HeFT is a new program. I'm just going to share with you a picture. So this is the site where you can find out about HeFT. Okay, it stands for Health Equity Focused Training. Essentially, alongside your normal GP training, there's some more information about what you'll do. In these health equity focused training, you basically might be working with sort of specific groups where there might be additional challenges, but you're also going to be doing additional learning. So as well as GP training and your normal exams, without any additional time, still the 3-year program, you're going to be doing more work essentially, because there's going to be more learning, and some of the groups you're going to be working with might be challenging groups. It might be very rewarding, but bear that in mind that it's going to be more challenging. Okay, they say that themselves, right? So that's what HeFT is. Okay, great. Anyone got any other questions? Ask them in the Q&A. Someone said, if you're on the waiting list, do you have to wait until May the 2nd to know if you get an offer? No, if you're on the waiting list, you might get an offer tomorrow. You might get an offer in the next cycle, which will run next week, but you might not. Whereas if you're on the waiting list, you're the only people that are still eligible. After 2nd May, only people on the waiting list get offers. Before 2nd of May, anyone can get an offer, including people who've already got an offer. They might get upgraded. And after 2nd May, there's no cycles. Whenever a job comes up, the next person in line will be offered it. Okay. Someone said, when will they put us with specific rotation? That's a great question. What will happen is after you accept an offer, they're going to check your references. And then at some point, you'll be contacted by your lead employer and the pre-employment checks will start. So you'll have to do things like a police check. There's various forms you need to fill up. I will hold another session like this where we'll go through some of those forms. I'll hold that in early May. Okay. After that is when you'll be contacted to pick specific rotations, but there's no guarantee you'll get the rotations you want. But I'll cover that in the next steps webinar where we'll talk about what's going to happen next. When that happens is different for each deanery because it doesn't happen on a national scale. Each deanery sends out their own request for you to choose and sub-preference rotations. So that could happen anywhere. For some of you, it might happen in May. Some of you, it might not happen until June. Someone said, can someone who ranked lower than me get an offer at a location I'm waiting on? That's possible only if you've ranked incorrectly. I'll give you an example. Let's say now you've ranked everywhere, even though you only wanted some specific places. So now you get an offer somewhere you don't want, okay? And there are no upgrades available by the upgrade deadline. So now you're going to that place. Someone that ranked lower than you is still on the waiting list because they only ranked the places they wanted. After the 2nd of May, you're not eligible for any offers at all. They might get an offer even though they scored lower than you. That's the only way it can happen. Within the current period, up until the end of the upgrade deadline, someone who scored ranked lower than you can't get an offer if you're waiting for it, because if you're higher than them, it will come to you before it goes to them. Okay. But if you've ranked incorrectly, you put places you didn't actually want down. Now you've got a job somewhere, you didn't want that place, but you said you did want it by ranking it, and then you don't get upgraded. You're now not eligible for any jobs because you've got one and you're not on the waiting list anymore. They could still be offered that after the 2nd of May when you're not eligible for jobs anymore. Okay. Someone said, what's the last date for those waiting after 2nd May? There's no set date, but it's unlikely after June that you'd get any offers. Someone said, how do we get to know more info about areas to choose because there are more conflicting views about different areas? You just need to spend time researching. You see, unfortunately, a lot of people, they have left this a little bit late because sometimes they wait till after they've got an offer. Now you've got 48 hours to decide. A good time to do the research would have been before you applied. And then if you're not sure about different places, go and visit them because you're going to commit to spend at least the next 3 years, maybe much longer than that there. Okay. So, you can do some things on the internet. So you can look at things like schools. Are there grammar schools in that area? Are there good private schools in the area? What are the local comprehensive schools like? What are the reports for? How much does accommodation cost? If there's specific things that you're interested in, are they available? Okay. You can do some of that, but some things, it's much easier if you go and actually have a look around. What does it feel like to actually like it? Okay. You can also ask in the group, and people that are already there might be able to give some information. Someone said that they're waiting for upgrades and they got an email from the lead employer. Can they reply while they're waiting for upgrades? Well, that depends, because if you're waiting for upgrades and you might get upgraded to a different place, you might end up with a different lead employer. So if you're waiting for upgrades, I'd recommend you wait till you've had, you know where you're going, because you might have a completely different lead employer. They might have completely different forms. Someone said, is there an additional chance of upgrading if you chose hold with upgrade versus accept with upgrade? No, the chance of upgrade is just based on your rank and if there's an available slot. Whether you hold or you accept doesn't increase that. But remember, the hold deadline is before the upgrade deadline. So by the hold deadline, hold is really if you're waiting for another specialty. If you're not waiting for another specialty and you've only ranked places you take a job in, what would be the point of holding? It's a waste of time, you see. Whereas if you hold and you forget to log in and change to accept, your application will end on the 28th of April and you won't have any job. Okay. Someone said, do GPs work night shifts? How long is for hospital rotations? We'll cover that at the next steps webinar. We're just focusing on offers and upgrades today. Okay. Is choosing the rotation based on MSRA score. In most areas that plays a part, but some rotations get allocated randomly. Someone said, can we speak about salaries and TERS? We cover that at a different course, which I'll tell you about shortly. Okay. Will the information automatically be passed over to another deanery if you get upgraded? Yes. Someone said, is it possible to use your round one score in the next year round one? Yes, up to 12 months. But if you didn't get a job in this round one, next year is going to be even more competitive. You're probably better off resitting. Okay. Someone said, for people who already have an offer, do they have to accept their offer by the 28th April? Yes. If you're holding and you don't accept by the 28th of April, you will lose the offer and have no offer at all. Okay. If you accept the offer, you can still opt into upgrades. You might get upgraded up to the 2nd of May. Okay. Someone said, what happens to a slot that's accepted and opted in for upgrade on the last day of offer on the May? Well, basically, whatever you've got at the 2nd of May, that's where you're going to be going. No more upgrades after that. Okay. Great. So that's the last question. Let me just tell you about this briefly. And if there's any other questions, I'll come back to it. So I will hold another free session like this, just a short one, half an hour, to talk about some of the next steps, about picking rotations, about some of the paperwork you're going to be asked to fill in, Form R, the police check. We'll go through some of that in detail. That will be at the beginning of May. Watch out for the link to join that. Once we set the exact date, after I've checked my diary, that will go into the GP training support group. So if you're not already a member of that, I think most of you are, but I'll just put the link to that into the chat. Okay. But if you are going to be starting training in August or in February next year, then you will find this course really helpful to give you a clear plan of everything to expect for the next 3 years, how to make the most of year 1, year 2, year 3, how to start thinking about the different parts of membership. There's 3 parts of membership. Okay, so workplace-based assessment is all 3 years. You're going to start having to work on your e-portfolio from basically the week after you start training. So we'll look at in the e-portfolio in detail, what are the 10 types of learning, how to write effective learning logs, how to make a PDP for each rotation. Okay, we'll look at all of the checkpoints that you need to meet by the end of ST1, otherwise you won't be able to progress to ST2. What are the checkpoints at the end of ST2 to progress to ST3? How to get a successful ARCP outcome, what to do if you get an adverse outcome to make sure that it doesn't get escalated further. You can't sit the MRCGP AKT until at least the 2nd year of training, but we'll introduce you to when to start preparing for it, some sample questions. Why do people fail? And how can you avoid that? And the last year of your training, you will sit the replacement for the MRCGP CSA and the MRCGP RCA. The new exam is going to be called the MRCGP SCA. That's what you're going to sit. Okay. So again, we will by then have the final format of that. By this course is going to be on the 10th of June. So we'll look at some sample cases. Why do people fail the final exams and how to avoid that, how to prepare effectively. We'll also touch on how to use your study leave effectively, how to maximize your study budget. What courses can you do during training that might make you more competitive after you finish training? Which ones are manageable? We'll look at the GP registrar contract in detail. How much of your time should be clinical? How much should be educational? We'll look at the salary scales, pay protection, study leave, annual leave. We'll look at medical legal issues. So what are the reasons that people get complaints against them during training? What might lead you to get a GMC referral? How can you avoid that? And then we'll look at those of you that might have an interest in developing a portfolio career like me or becoming a GP with specialist interests. You do those things after training. But if you can start thinking about it during training, you might be able to do certain courses, qualifications, get exposure so that when you finish and start thinking about these things, you've already got a head start. And lastly, how to succeed in training, the key tips that will really help you get the most. So it's a full day course, 9:30 to 5:30, full day live stream via Zoom on Saturday, the 10th of June. You can join from anywhere in the world and you'll get access to the recording for a month afterwards. Okay. So if you're not available on that day, you could still book and get access. So it's £250. If you book by the 10th of May, i.e. by a month before, we're running an early bird discount. So you can book for just £195. And we have a limited number of £100 bursaries for those people who are members of the eMedica Alumni Association. So that's basically people that have used eMedica as part of their preparation. So if you used eMedica online, we attended our course, or you used our case cards, then if you join the Alumni Association, I've just clicked the link there for you. I'll show you. So basically, it's free to register, but if you just put some information down here and tell us which resources you used, as long as your email matches, we'll know that you've used it before. What will happen is you'll get a code that will give you £100 discount. So if you booked before the early bird and you're eligible for a bursary, you could actually attend for £95. Even if you've not used eMedica before, if you book by the 10th of May, you can still save £55 and book for this price rather than the full price. Okay, so that's something to watch out. And when you finish this webinar, you'll be redirected to the page on our website just so you can see the details of this course if you want to have a look at it for more information. So we've got 5 more minutes. Let's see any other questions. Someone said that they are an alumnus and they applied for the bursary. So what happens when you signed up? You would automatically been given the code after your emails match. So if you didn't see that page, feel free to email us. We also send you an email a couple of days later with the code. It might have gone to spam. So check your spam. If you don't find it, email us at info@eMedica, and the team will be happy to look into it for you. Okay. Someone said that they'll be on the waiting list if they don't accept their hold and upgrade till. No. If you've been made an offer, you're no longer on the waiting list. Whether you select accept or hold, remember, if you made an offer and you hold it, if you then don't accept that by the hold deadline, it will change to reject. Your application will end. You won't be on the waiting list and you're not eligible for any other jobs anymore. Okay. Someone said, what to do if you don't want any more upgrades? You can just untick the opt-in for upgrades. Now you're opted out and save. Okay. You won't get any upgrades. So just to clarify, if you've been made an offer, you're no longer on the waiting list. The waiting list for people who've never had an offer. Okay. Great. So that's the last question I can see in the Q&A. Anything else? I've got 2 more minutes. Someone said they've accepted with upgrade. So should they mail their lead employer? If you're waiting for an upgrade, wait till you know where you're going to go, because you might get upgraded up to the 2nd of May. Someone said, if your application is withdrawn, will your application be affected for the next round? No, just for this round. It's over for this round. Someone said they're not able to attend the course on the 10th of June. So you could book now, so you get the discount, and then just tell us that you can't attend, and we'll set up access to the recording, because you get access to the recording for a month afterwards. Okay. Or if I just show you, what you can do is you can just subscribe to the recording. So if you just scroll down, just click subscribe. You can actually subscribe to the recording anywhere from 1 month all the way up to 12 months. Okay. And again, that's still on the discounted price at the moment. Okay. This is the recording from last year's course, though. It will automatically update to the recording of this year's course after this year's course has happened. It happens automatically because, we'll record 7 hours of videos and then process them. Okay. Hope that helps. Someone said, what's the lowest rank that got on offer so far? 5589. That's the last question. And also it's exactly 6:30. So perfect. So thank you very much for joining. I hope you found it helpful. For those of you that are still waiting, be patient. Okay. You may well get something now, but remember, as long as you've ranked correctly, if you've only ranked places you would take a job in, that actually increases your chance of getting a job compared to someone that ranks everything. Because if you rank everything, you could get a job you don't want, and now you're not on the waiting list anymore. You cannot get jobs after the 2nd of May. Especially those of you with lower ranks, you're much more likely to get a job after the 2nd of May, when a lot of other people are no longer competing for those jobs. Okay, so thanks very much, everyone. Hope it's been helpful. I do hope to see a lot of you here, because what a lot of people have said, that have joined in previous years, is that a lot of these forms and different assessments are really overwhelming when you start training. And having a clear idea about it before you start, it just means that when they start, they can focus on what they're being told and focus on the job, because they already know how to handle all of these things. They've got a clear plan and an overview and understanding of the whole process for the next 3 years. So it gives you a lot more confidence to sort of ask the right questions, to sort of know how to navigate training and make the most of it. That's exactly why it's called Maximize Your GP Training. It helps you get the most out of every rotation and out of every year in training. So I really do hope to see some of you there. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great evening. And then watch out for the Next Steps webinar, which will covering some of that paperwork and the pre-employment checks and how to pick rotations and things like that. That will happen early May. I'll post it in the group. Okay, thanks very much, everyone.